Okay, rulers, settle down. Ruler School is brought to you by Odyssey Games, where you can go to get pre-orders of all the upcoming Force of Will sets, as well as releases of previous sets after they come out. ccgprime.com with over 100,000 Force of Will singles, as well as out-of-print boxes from the past, and TCG accessories, as well as fowlibrary.com, a wonderful resource for deck lists, article discussions, and more. Check them out at fowlibrary.com, as well as these amazing patrons. Special thanks to guest lecturer members Fight Ramen and Shukong Fu. Thank you for your support. Class is in session. Good evening, rulers, and welcome back after a long week of Force of Will to your favorite ever live Force of Will podcast. It's Office Hours, featuring myself, DMO73. See, you made me mess up the first line, and so that I changed the first line, so that I messed up the whole intro. Jeez Louise. Professionalism. Anyway, we're here. I'm DMO73. This is Mike Rance, and that's Paul Reisman, and we're here to talk about Force of Will. Let's have a good time.
We didn't even get to introduce ourselves, so I screwed Jeremy up
so
bad.
Yep. We're shooting right past to the topic.
It's off the rails already.
Off
it's
the rails.
5 seconds in. Let's go.
Yeah.
It's a strong start. Tonight. I do want to say thank you all so much for tuning in. Thank you to everybody who submitted a question to our kind of mailbag day. Sometimes there's just not a lot of news or major topics to kind of really talk about that are blaringly obvious. So sometimes we like to use this to say, what do you guys want to talk about? So that's what we're doing. So feel free to leave some comments in those chat boxes there to give us some information. And if you like what we're doing, want to consider supporting us or spamming a bunch of emos to make me look silly in the chat, you can go ahead and consider clicking that join button down below to join the channel as a member. Help us get back up to 100 members here, maybe before the Wanderer GP next month, which you can go sign up for right now in the description. The Wanderer GP on the 16th and 17th, Discord by Games and Geek. It is for United States only, according to the post. So just as a heads up for people, but it is your first opportunity here in the US to get those awesome Dark Alice and Moonshade promos. And as a special rule, that is what we are telling you have to do, but is in no way affiliated with Games and Geek, because it is Easter weekend. If you are playing, you must sideboard a single copy of Savior of Splendor. Just saying, in celebration of Easter, you have to sideboard a single copy of Savior of Splendor.
And you should play a rabbit deck, because then you can play
Easter bunnies. Yeah, for sure. There it is.
Eggs.
With Rook Egg.
Yep.
And Fruit of Yggdrasil.
Yep.
We can make a deck out of this.
We can make an Easter deck. There you go.
Easter deck.
Y'all are insane. So, yes, we're going to talk about a few things. I do have some cool topics that we've brought up and had questions brought up to us. But yeah, guys, how's it going? How are things going in general? Force of Will related.
I'm almost done.
That's to the chat.
You're almost done sorting my collection?
It's Alice Origins, guys.
It's the last cluster.
Almost there.
It's the last one that I have to do. And it's almost done.
There you go.
There's a lot of shinies in there.
There's a lot of shiny cards in there. Appreciate it. We did get to see a cool piece of artwork today in Converging Wills. If you haven't already checked them out on Converging Wills' Facebook page, we saw Thor. I don't have the artwork here, but go check it out by checking out Converging Wills. We saw Thor shown off. Art by Sigmund, everyone's favorite, Sylvia dragon artist, doing the artwork for Thor, which was pretty tight. Can't wait to see what that card looks like. But yeah, let's go ahead and jump right into some questions. Again, I do see some questions in the chat. I'm looking, we'll come back to those. First question from Mike Rance. When will I have a real co-host for the podcast instead of Mike Rance?
I can answer this one. It's actually going to be never, because you guys are always going to be stuck with me. You're never going to have somebody with real professionalism. You're never going to have somebody who knows the game inside and out. But you are going to have the biggest Wanderer show, the worst meme deck creator, and the guy who accidentally tapped a GP once because he was just playing the right brainless deck for the time.
There you go. Perfect. That's good. And you know what? We're glad you're here. We're never going to try to get rid of you, Mike.
Take their my friends.
At least right now.
Charlie wants to know, what we think we all want to know is, why is Jeremy Franklin so handsome? I would, I don't know.
Good genetics, I guess.
I guess. I don't know. I wouldn't consider myself classically handsome, but and then the real question, that's actually the good meat and potatoes discussion from the Facebook page.
Are you telling me that the Shirley question was not a real question?
No.
Come on.
This is from Brandon Bremont, who says, what do you believe the company's Wanderer ban list philosophy should lean towards? Aggressively banning early frontrunners in the format until it becomes stable, or being relatively lax with early bannings to keep the format feeling powerful? And he says these are strong benefits to each philosophy. Bans ensure fun game-to-game experiences, while light bannings promote more trust in the stability of a eternal format, growing a stronger out-of-game community. Which do you think is more beneficial? I think for me, I tend to lean towards relatively lax early bannings, but a confidence and a willingness to ban as needed. That like I think like not being afraid to just say nope and drop the hammer. I don't think we need to go, oh, before this card gets out of hand, hammer it. I think it's, oh, we've seen this card get out of hand. Back in your hole, right? I think to me that, like you say in your comment, Brandon, like it builds more confidence, because I think that especially as a smaller game, sometimes it can be hard for devs to have a quote unquote breaker on the team to like when they're doing set design. And so there are gonna be things that show up that just aren't expected, and are gonna be needing to get hit or just prove to be, you know, not okay. And so you should be confident in being able to ban them. But I also think that like every dog should have its day, right? Like give it a chance, and then, okay, it's had its time in the sun. We can move on from that.
So I will offer a counterpoint.
Feel free, go right ahead.
Anybody who knows when I was running Conqueror and like kind of spearheading that movement knows that I really enjoy either like slight changes to text in order to make things happen, which is not going to happen in Wanderer, but also I do promote the idea of a much more rigorous ban list.
Sure.
But I don't typically think of the rigorous ban list in terms of ban this card that's currently like literally something that's coming out being like, oh, this is going to be too strong, it's going to be too strong, let's ban it. I believe if there's a problem, you go back to the source, you find the card that's going to be the problem child with whatever is new is coming out.
Yeah.
Slap that thing off. If the new thing tends to be the more problematic card, then you let it have its time in the sun, take it off, put the other thing back on. But
yes,
at the same time, you can get more aggressive with your ban list, especially because Wanderer is going to be the only format actually supported by the company moving forward. It's probably better to make sure that you're able to make these more aggressive ban lists. Like the players still have, you know, the however many. I don't even know the size of the cards anymore. There's always gonna be something.
You bring up a good point there. I guess I would amend it to say I'm perfectly fine aggressively banning older cards that bring an unintended interaction into the environment from a newer card. Like I'm okay with that. But when it comes to hitting a new card, I would prefer us like do kind of what you say of like hit an older card that's the unfortunate interaction, give it its time. If it's still too good, then you just hit it and say like, okay, we tried, move on.
That was actually the reason that in the original Community Wanderer list, where did my focus go? Community Wanderer list, when we were talking about the Alice Palace interaction, Palace is the card that got hit, not Alice.
Right.
And Palace on its own is not terribly broken. Alice, on the other hand, a little more unstable because of the unintended synergies she puts together with other decks.
Right.
Once we went over to Conqueror, when there had been enough time from when Alice was released for the whole thing to happen, we said, we're going to start with the idea that we had with the Wanderer Committee, ban the Light Palace, leave Alice there. Those unintended side effects of having a card that's every type came up, and we're like, all right, swap them. Done. The format was saved.
Yep. Paul, what about you?
I'm trying to think about this through like all of my Yu-Gi-Oh experience and like what I hated about those ban lists that this company doesn't do.
Which
And
is
so I'm trying to remember like so Brandon's question was, are you aggressively banning stuff now or are you waiting? Is that kind of like our two
yeah,
choices?
it's this idea of like, you know, I think for the phrasing is like, you know, if we had let Feasting have like a single tournament and showed just exactly how oppressive it was after one tournament, we're like, this is clearly a mistake. Slap Feasting down now, as opposed to like kind of what's happened for Wanderer. I would say that like the Feasting ban and the Carlina ban in Wanderer, I think, are more in line with his second point of like a relatively lax in the concept of early banning, but still actually hitting things to then say like we want this environment to improve. You know, like you had your chance, time to move on with this card.
Yeah, well,
I
I mean,
like
there's definitely like two perspectives to look at it, right? So from the competitive standpoint, clearly having a more rigorous ban list that opens up the player base to a wide variety and diversity of decks is one argument to make. But I'm kind of with Roderick because I feel for both arguments. One
Yeah.
is really good for competitive. The other one is really good for sales, right? So if you like really want to promote the game and really promote like, oh, these are the cards that you know for sure are not going to be banned in this set that we're reprinting things for. I say just let it go for a little bit.
Yeah.
Just see what happens. And then like as things come up, like one card bubbles up that really needs to be hit because we didn't see the permutations of that card in interactions with other cards. Just hit it.
Yeah.
Like,
I think it does need to be. I think creating a healthy ban list does need to be a hybrid of the two, because I don't think you could just have an all or nothing. Which I will say that I think the current approach that we've seen from the Wanderer ban list in the past year and a half, has been what I would consider to be the good hybrid approach, which has been nice. But yeah, almost to Greg Grumbler's point. So every card gets a minimum 3-month trial. In terms of when it's a new card that's first released, the new card that's first released, yes, I think should always have at least a full time to be able to be played as is. I think that there are some exceptions to that rule where some kind of action needs to be taken, and I think that Tea Party is a really good indicator because I think we can all agree when the conversation of the Tea Party card came up, across the board, I don't think anyone wanted Tea Party banned, right? I didn't talk to anybody and say, oh yeah, Tea Party can't exist as a card. That wasn't what I heard from anyone. What I heard from people was Tea Party as designed makes these cards from the past like this is what we want to prevent. We can keep Tea Party. This interaction with the old card is what we want to stop. And so that was why the advocacy was for banning the 2 Death Scythes or errata-ing Tea Party. Because in both of those cases, the newer card was going to get its time in the sun because that's what people want. You don't want to like buy a fresh off the rack box and say, oh yeah, this card that you're probably going to pull at least 3 copies of, you just can't use. Like that's not a good thing to tell new people. That's not a way to that's also not a way to inspire health in a game. Like consider health in a game is just say like, yeah, we keep designing things and then within like a couple weeks realizing those cards can't exist. That's like doesn't speak to good health of like new design philosophy. So looking at older cards for those early bans is the typically healthier choice and builds more confidence. But you have to follow it up with being willing to step in and say, okay, yeah, we do need to step in and take some action on this. But again, Charlie gave to me a really good like crossover from Yu-Gi-Oh into like when the idea of a ban list crossing over from Yu-Gi-Oh to here is if any deck, specifically one deck, survives at top tables like competitively successfully for 2 formats, quote unquote 2 formats, then you need to start
2 years.
No, not 2 years, but like set came out
like
this
2
deck
set rotations.
like
so like 1 set, 2 set. If That's what we're talking about.
If after the third set has now dropped and that deck from set 1 is still just that much of a powerhouse, we need to go back and take a look at that set, right? That's where like we need to start acting. And I honestly think that makes a lot of sense to me, and I like that philosophy. I think that there are some elements where you could maybe pull the trigger a little bit quicker, which is we'll get to a little bit in a second. But for the most part, I think that's a good philosophy to have. So banning to maintain game state and enjoyment. Instead of ban, limit the playset viability. I don't like limited and semi-limited.
I'm gonna limit fencing.
And Eris will talk to that. There's a third part of the conversation at that point. So Brandon gave a couple of examples, right? Of like, in this vein of thinking, what do you think about a ban of X, Y, and Z? And he gave up the 3 examples of Atomic Turbulence, Prisia Big Show, and Dark Yggdrasil. So I'll talk about those 3. Because I think that I think that 2 of the 3 as it stands are ban-worthy, and 1 is on my probably needs it potentially, but I need to see a little bit more. Atomic Turbulence, I think, needs to get hit. I think it can have this event in April, but it can get hit, and I will tell you why. Because of there are several reasons why I think it deserves to get hit, and several reasons why I think it's okay for Violet for it to get hit. That Violet isn't going to go anywhere just because this card is gone. It's a cheap silence that's also burn damage, that's also a deck accelerator, right? So it's doing a bunch of different things for the deck. Even if you cancel it, it's at minimum an accelerator for Violet. And having any kind of card that accelerates regardless of what your opponent does is a card that you're like, I don't think that's healthy for overall game state, right? So that's a problem, and why I think it needs to go. And the silence part, without the silence, Atomic Bahamut is just a good win con. Right? It is a good win con. With the silence, Atomic Bahamut becomes an insanely frustrating to deal with and play against win con, which is not good for player health. It's not good for environment health. And it needs, I think that there's some reasons why. And also why I think it's okay for Violet to get that hit is because they have setting the stage. Setting the stage does, in a sense, what Atomic Turbulence's best feature for Violet is in terms of making Baja uncancelable without being an accelerator and burning face and locking your opponent out for the turn. So it fulfills a niche but still lets Violet function as is, but she's back to Atomic Bahamut is just a good finisher. So that's my thoughts. Guys, do you have any? I mean, I kind of went really far deep into that, but I'd be curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I think any card you're going to ban, you have to take into consideration, like, what does that do for player agency? So, like, Atomic Turbulence gives the player who's being turbulenced agency, because all of a sudden their stuff works again, right?
Yeah.
If you are banning Prisia, you're taking away the agency and the flexibility from one player who isn't playing Prisia. So you're able to sort of like meet them on tandem a little bit better.
Right.
Right. The sheer flexibility and utility that card offers, if you don't play it, you kind of feel bad for not playing it, right? So it makes sense. It was made at a time where we weren't even thinking about moving into Wanderer, and I think that's probably going to be the biggest conversation the company's going to have. What cards need to be banned when we weren't thinking about Wanderer?
Yeah. The problem
like
is
long term.
The problem is like for Prisia, and Mike, I'll get to you one more second about Atomic Turbulence, right? Because I think we all have the same thought about Prisia. Is the reason why she needs to be banned is because she's just a future-proof nightmare. Yep. Like she just any card like that in an Eternal format just by existing drastically warps what set design is allowed to be purely by nature of existing. And so it's not that it's not that there isn't counterplay to it, and it's not that there isn't like it's a good card. There's so much more to it than that. But the impact that kind of card existing in an Eternal format has to the ability to design sets is unnecessarily debilitating and restricting to prevent it from going out of control. And so it's just for the overall health of everybody, gotta get the axe. I think, again, it can have the April event. It can have the first Wanderer event. But then in May, you're out of here. Mike, Turbulence.
Turbulence. Yes. I think what I would say about Turbulence has pretty much already been said. But for the most part, Turbulence literally just puts your current game plan that gets achieved from dropping a heart-to-heart talk on turn 1, like 2 turns earlier. And having Bahamut as a win condition turn 3 or 4, I think is totally fine, very healthy for the game. Bahamut already comes, I'm pretty sure like the enter effect already comes with like a players can't chase to this.
Correct. Yeah. The enter effect itself can't be chased.
Like, why do we need that on top of literally a Law of Silence that burns and accelerates your game plan? It just makes no sense to me.
Yeah.
So, no, fully in favor of this entire idea of hitting Turbulence, letting Baha be Baha. Like, if Baha attacks, then you're just like, all right, cool. I don't know, down the drain. That's a 1-cost cancel.
Yeah.
For Baha, pretty much.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that you can do about it. Yeah, there's a lot of things. There are a lot of things that make Violet, without Turbulence, if the only protection, quote unquote, that Violet gets is second boon to copy a cancel or setting the stage, then suddenly Violet cannot be going off consistently on 2 or even 3 based on the matchup. Like, they have to kind of slow roll themselves because they're just going to walk it, otherwise they're just going to walk in to just like, great, you removed all your atoms. Like your Baha's dead. Like, whoops. Which again creates Baha into a fine and good win condition that's not like frustrating and removes player agency to play against, but is still good. So yeah. And then the last thing is, I do want to talk. I'll give this one more to Mike because Mike and I have had a little bit of a conversation about this. But Dark Tree. Thoughts on whether or not? Remember, we have Allosaurus, we have Rebirth of the Soul, we have Horn, all unbanned.
Release
and release
memory disappearance.
There's a lot of things.
Too many things.
To that end, Tree 2. What are your thoughts?
Tree 2, people should know my thoughts about this from when I ran Conqueror. Tree 2 was banned 4 months, we could bring Horn back. And it was totally fine. Like, Horn is a card, going back to this idea of player agency, Horn is a card that gives control versus control players agency to continue the game for longer by smartly playing out their Horn. Horn coming back into the game also gives you, I don't know, if you're a Prisia fan from back in the day, you can use it to play out your Sacred Beast so that you're not just hot, steamy garbage sitting in your hand. And you just have to be like, oh, sir, Sisay. And it's like, okay, cool, Hot Springs. I'm going to get 3 friendship counters. No, you're not. You're not getting 3 friendship counters because you're playing a deck. But I don't know, dude. It's just like Horn does so much for players that want to either continue on the game states, mess with graveyards, play out a 2-cost by who, I don't know. People do that, I guess.
The things to me with Dark Tree, because you and I had this conversation as soon as Horn got banned. We were like, cool, Dark Tree is just the only deck, right? But I think the thing that's shifted it to me from a this is unplayable or this is the only deck to, and so therefore needs to be banned, to let's keep it on a watch list, at least for right now, is threefold. At the time of Dark Tree's inception, the number of cards that we had that provided consistent life loss in this deck against this deck was like one card. I think at the time it was the Lapis spell that cost 2, where you did 400 life loss to your opponent, right? We had that. We had so few viable decks that had instant speed burn, and we didn't have nearly as many ability interacting cards as we do now. And so to me, all 3 of those things are very much more present in the environment than they have been. Like the ability to mess with and screw up horn activations or instant top deck activations. The amount you can literally play a deck as, like right now, you can play a deck that does not ever try to deal damage and just life losses your opponent out. Like that is a deck you can currently play. And so for me, I'm like, Darktree would suck against that, because they'd be like, I'm just never going to swing, and your deck's going to be real thick, and you're going to feel real bad, and then I'm going to drain you to death, right? And then the other thing is the amount of instant speed burn that's effective that we've brought into the environment since then is significantly higher as well. I played 5 games in a row against a Nyarlathotep deck, the Nyarlathotep pop-off deck in Wanderer. And this was pre-6 Sage ban, so like even Darktree got 6 Sage Stone at that point in time. I lost on turn 2 to a Nyarlathotep every game, because Gnarly was like, you have nothing to stop Isis, blah, 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 one-shot your deck, and then also Dogramagora in your upkeep, Dogramagora in your upkeep, explosion during your upkeep by banishing my stones. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I just don't have an out to all that instant speed burn. So, like, there's a lot more threats to Tree 2 than there were way back in the day. But that doesn't mean that it shouldn't also be watched, because that's a card where I think Tree 2 brings up an interesting concept when you come to bannings, and it goes back to what Paul brought up about player agency, right? About, is it healthy for a game state to allow a ruler that is truly, just based on what you're playing, dismally impossible to beat? Right.
Here's a pie chart. Lovely pie chart.
Yeah, I do.
Here's the slice of the pie chart of cards and decks that can effectively deal with Tree that players can build. Here's the rest.
Yeah, and that's why it requires more investigation, right? Like
that's why Tree is a big deal. That's why a Turbulence being banned is a big deal.
Yeah, right. Tree, I think Tree. I would argue that like the pie chart for Tree 2 is like maybe here, but this is in flux because it would need more testing. But the fact of the matter is, we need to be having the conversation about that pie chart, not just saying Tree's fine, right? As opposed to like Turbulence is like this and needs to be fixed. Prisia is like, things can answer it, but we have more than the pie chart to consider. Need to get rid of it. Like
half that fucking pie chart is
Prisia.
I just want to put that out.
Just is more Prisia. Cards that can answer Prisia. More Prisia.
This deck seems a little bit lackluster. What does it need? More Prisia.
Yeah, we can't say Tree is going to lose every game against life loss. I mean, like, you're not wrong. But also,
everything has to go perfectly for you to beat Tree in the ideal circumstances. Like your perfect game is better than Tree's perfect game, but Tree's perfect game is better than your mid game.
Yeah,
that's all it is.
Right. So there is, there's some things to be considerate of there, right? Mm-hmm. Just as much as the life loss enjoyer. Yeah, I would argue that like there is. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say Tree is one of those decks where the core of the deck is so good at controlling that it might push certain other rogue strategies out of the metagame.
Right.
Which might sour players' tastes.
Right.
But it could just be like one of those decks. Like it could just be like chain burn. Like it is there, and you have to respect the fact that it's there.
Chain burn.
Well, it's almost
That was metagame for one moment in like 2012. It was crazy.
It's also metagame with Mystic Mind, but whatever.
Another good example of that, actually, to be honest, is going back to the Wanderer event where I think that we got six Sage Stone hit somehow. So no, we got Carlina hit with Hungry Box, was like a big deck of a similar nature that people thought was going to be present in that environment was the Brunhild Turbo Seal, right? Like the idea of it, you think about that, it's going to be so dismal to play against if I get paired up against it. But then it got into a tournament environment and people were aware of it, and it was okay. Like people were prepared for it, and it was okay. So it could be along those same lines, but it's still like Schrodinger's box, and it's worth looking at, I would say. So
Yeah.
so those are good points.
Absolutely.
You can cheat out Ouroboros and life lost them with 4 Lucy's. You can also just cast Inferno. Like, that sets your opponent's life down to whatever you are, right? So there's a lot of things that you can do to mess with Tree 2 now.
Oh, jeez.
There's still things. So Eris gave a nice little follow-up question to this, which was, also in this vein, would you ever see a future where in addition to outright banned, we introduce a restricted limited for certain cards, or maybe prevent certain permissions of decks cards being allowed to be played together? Like you can play this but not with this. I'm trying to remember what game did we play where that was the thing, where you couldn't play
like certain things together.
To be fair, Smogan had the complex ban on Swift Swim and Drizzle for a little while, where if you had a Polytoad with Drizzle, you couldn't use Swift Swim mons, but if your opponent had Polytoad with Drizzle, you could use that to your advantage with your Swift Swim mons. So something kind of similar in that regard, I would say.
Yeah, I'd say that's also probably easier to manage in something like Smogon, like Pokemon Online, like Master Duel, like where you can just like flip a switch.
Yeah,
but if you're cracking packs in real life, I would say if we did have to go into semi-limit, like if you said semi-limit Priscia, I'd be fine with that.
I think for me, the thing that says that can't
She's like a malicious.
I think the thing that separates FOW from Yu-Gi-Oh! In the ability to do a limited or semi-limited is the fact that we get a mulligan. I think that
hands down.
I think that
yeah.
I think because we have a mulligan that is partial Paris as opposed to like Magic's where it's like full shuffle. I do not think you can I do not think you can have a limited restricted list.
That's probably true, honestly.
Because the thing about a limited or restricted list in Yu-Gi-Oh! Is like your opening hand is your opening hand, right? And so limiting the number of a copy of a card that you can play in a Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck does actually drastically impact that card's playability, because you're just not going to see it in your opener, and that's the only chance you get to see it in your opener.
Paul, I do want to go back to the Priscia is malicious comment, because I just want to let's just take a moment. With Force of Will, Priscia could be anywhere from 4, 3, 2, and 1. In Yu-Gi-Oh!, because of what Konami's done with malicious for years, they had to create a new number somewhere between 2 and 3 to determine what malicious's place is on the ban list. The scientists had to make a new number for how many malicious you can play in your deck. I don't want that with Priscia. No limited list. No semi-limited list.
As far as I know, the number is still 2. But that's okay.
Yeah, no, I do think because play sets are 4-ofs, and because we have a mulligan, I don't think you can ever do a limited list to any kind of like actual impact. That like you would say like, well, we don't want to get rid of the card outright, so we'll do this. I don't think that's gonna have the impact you want.
Cut it out.
So,
nobody likes it.
Just
nobody
like
likes nobody thinks Priscia is good.
I think you just get rid of the cards. Good. I mean, it's a great question though. Prisia is duality plus tour guide, but it's specials tour guide.
Actually, it's Crystal Seer if you really think about it. If you all old school Yu-Gi-Oh players want to talk about that.
Oh my crystals! Oh my god, the Apprentice engine with Crystal Seer. Man, I was jonesing for that back in the day.
Yeah.
That good
So
shit right
let's see.
there.
Let's talk about some other questions
Troop
here as we go in
scoop,
here.
let's go.
Which rulers will have the strongest 5 decks competing on the 16th? Okay, so that is a good.
It's all going to be Prego TK because
It's
somebody
not.
wants to win $100.
It's really not.
Somebody wants to win $100 here.
So
I know it's you. Yes, you.
Hell, so it's gonna be
Robert Green.
So I think
Yeah.
I think instead of saying the 5 strongest decks, I think it's about what types of decks we're gonna see, or like what types of decks are gonna be successful. Because I think that there are two, for the kinds of things we're expecting. There's like in each of those categories, there's like 2 decks that fill that niche, and it's like bursty aggro, which is like Violet and Alice, like New Order Alice, like bursty kind of aggression. And then you have the control, which is Welser and Kaguya, Order Kaguya. And then you have the, somewhere in the floating orb, you have the Jank, which is like, I won't say jank, I'll say like the B tier stuff. That's just like
Jank,
people experimenting with stuff. And then I do think you have Odin as your third piece of your triangle.
Yes.
I legitimately think that Odin in this current Wanderer format, if the other 2 pieces of the popular strong cycle are Kaguya combo, like Kaguya control decks, and Violet / Alice aggro decks, I think Odin goes because that man can main deck Sword and Dark Sun, and we'll play them. And those are very good cards against those other decks.
They're well positioned.
So that being said, it's also Wanderer, and it's the first Wanderer event, and it's also the first time we get Dark Alice Rabbit Princesses and Moonshades. So I literally expect everything to show up. I expect someone to register Croco Sharks, like that, like to that degree of everything's going to show up, and I hope it does. I hope we see 70+ people, and I hope the decks are the most off the cuff thing we've ever seen.
I hope somebody makes Asmodeus Croco Sharks.
Yeah, do it.
I just want 60 Croco Sharks in that deck, man. That's all I want to see.
Do it.
Somebody make me happy.
The Mistletoe Sword, Babatunde.
Yeah, Mistletoe Sword.
Yeah, but like, one of the other big differences between our game and a game like Yu-Gi-Oh is that like we like to go wide with our diversity, right?
Yeah.
So like if you're going to the GP to try and top, you're going to be playing some of the best decks. That's just a given. But like a lot of people just go to have fun, and you know we never see a deck crack more than like 30%. So it's
Charlie, calm down. Don't set their prison in a looter like you madman.
I mean,
don't do that.
If only it stopped to J rulers.
God, imagine.
I played the other day with the K1 stealth deck, and I went, man, if only all of these stealth cards hit J rulers too, this deck would probably be busted. But
I mean, at that point, just put down a bunch of Croco Sharks. That's
yeah,
I told you.
Yeah, the sword of Mistletoe, because it has eternal and it sits on board and Violet literally can't stop it. Like it hits the board and Violet goes, ah.
That's cool.
Great. Cool sword. Great.
Sword, great sword. Love that
Yes,
sword.
play the Three Musketeers. Go for it.
Three Musketeers for sure.
Okay, listen.
You cried when you realized you can't keys a Hanzo enter effect? Yeah, because he a J ruler.
J ruler now.
Mass produce Knights of the Round Table. Focus on having as many robots as possible. Yeah, for sure. How many decks will have chance standby cards? The only viable, if you are not Perfect Loki will, and if you're playing K1 you will. Other than that, you won't be. I don't think.
Yeah.
Because so many of the chance standbys only hit Rezos.
Yo, mass produce tonight. We're gonna drop a bunch of remote control golems. Let's go. Beep boop bop boop bop. Got him on board.
Trying to remember what Flame Trap does.
Only to Rezos, if I
Only
remember
Rezos.
correctly.
Yeah, that's incredibly niche. Never mind. Don't play Flame Trap, guys.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. I mean, like, again, good design, but like even mom and dad don't hit J rulers.
Yeah,
like dad doesn't even hit J rulers. So like the natural counter to the stealth standby deck is order decks. But to be perfectly honest, against non-order decks, K1 stealth is insane. Like, that deck is very good. You get to play 1-drop Lunar Lakes, you get to play Lorite, you get to play Executioner, you get to play Mom and Dad. Like, if your opponent is like, I'ma play dudes, then you're like, that was dumb, and you just murder them with face down cards. Like, again, meta dependent.
Does Merlin hit J Resonators?
Merlin does not hit J Resonators. Neither does Underground Dragger, and it's really disappointing. So again, but like that to me is part of the fun of this Wanderer event, is I fully anticipate people bringing off the cuff kind of stuff, and we're going to see really wild upsets, and we're going to see really wild changes. But like, we talked about this before off camera. There is a thread in the Forcible community, I would say, from people who are skeptical about the shift to Wanderer, but who are, I would say, are also have always been kind of naysayers in general, where, oh, so many of the cards in the set are just not playable in Wanderer. And I would go, yeah, that's literally every card game. That's point one. Two, I think the biggest thing to note about Wanderer is that the best thing that Wanderer brings now is the rulers. Because main deck Force of Will cards, jeez Louise, Patrick, main deck Force of Will cards designed back in the day were designed for old FOW, which was, you and I are going to shoot shots across the bow for 2 to 3 turns, and then we're going to start interacting with each other. That is not FOW now. And so cards that have been designed for old FOW are not, from the main deck of old FOW, are not going to see success in the main decks of new FOW. That being said, a ruler doesn't give a shit about what's in your main deck. A ruler is just a concept that you can then build a 40-card main deck to support. And so in that space, a lot of rulers have very fun Wanderer implications. While there's still being a nice core package of staples that are going to be good for Wanderer to bring in to up to date now, which is hopefully what that reprint set is going to be, right? Hopefully it's that kind of core good stuff. So Wanderer casually is a blast. Wanderer in current New Frontiers, I think, is actually pretty healthy outside of a few cards that I want to see hit, which we already talked about them. I think it's Dance of Spirits, Atomic Turbulence, and Prisia. We let them have one more tournament, and then we give them the boot. But beyond that, I'm pretty happy about Wanderer. Great question, Gray. That was kind of brought into topic points. Do you guys have any different thoughts about what we're going to see in the Wanderer event? I know we've kind of talked about it before, but I'd be curious if you have some different ideas.
I want us to just see a K1 stealth deck, but instead of doing the mom and pop and all the usual control stuff, I just somebody blast in, use Pale Savior to blast in Tegra's Pearl Shine on turn 1 whenever they can. Like, that just sounds cool.
Yeah, I'd be down for that.
I'm thinking about things like that. Like, I made his K1 stealth deck just because I was like messing around with cards that I had lying around, and like, oh, I can just cheat in Hunting Angel now, which is also a miscalculation plus a target for Pale Savior, so you're not dead in the water if you have one in your hand. And I'm like, there's synergies now.
Yeah.
There's cards you can play. There's things to do in my Wanderer? More likely than you think.
The other thing, too, is I'm trying to remember the darkness. The darkness one is just if you deal damage to your opponent in any way.
Mm-hmm.
In any way.
Nighttime Raiders, yep. I used to play that with the Alice's little assault force. sack it, deal 200.
Red one.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mephistopheles.
Yeah,
Like, that
yeah.
shit was cool.
Like, that's something that in current Wanderer you can definitely do because it cheats in a black resonator, right?
5 cost or less.
5 cost or less. So, like, you know,
Oh, the 3K from the set.
or Fallen Angel of Black. Well, yeah, Asmodeus, or Amadeus, or Fallen Angel of Black tier. Some neg 12 to the board. That hits J rulers, by the way. Like, that's a thing that you could build, right? And like, it's crazy. Also, let's talk about the fact that chant standbys don't care about Fairer Spell. They literally don't care. They completely ignore Fairer Spell, right? Now I'm wanting to build that deck. Gosh dang it.
Got him.
Got me. I have my K1 like playmat too. I can play on that. But yeah.
Oh, I got an idea, Jeremy.
But yeah, this is the things
Jeremy got an idea.
This is the things of.
Jeremy got an idea.
I hear you. Let me finish my sentence.
Okay, go ahead.
This is the thing that I think is the best part about Wanderer is the fact that there are some very cool interactions. There are old school cards that can be repurposed and retooled to work in New FAO. And there's almost some old school cards that actually can work now because of New FAO. Like Savior of Splendor and the black card, literally unplayable back in the day because they were too hard to execute and the payoffs weren't good enough. But then you bring those into current FAO where we're getting to the meat and potatoes quicker, suddenly easier to execute, much better payoffs for them. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. So there's a lot of space to explore with it. There's a lot of things. I fully expect a deck in the top 8. Like, sorry, I won't say fully expect. I would not be surprised if a deck that makes it into the top 8 of the Wanderer GP, I had no idea that it was there. Like, just shows up and I'm like, did not expect that deck at all. I would not be surprised if someone pulls out something crazy and makes something really cool. We have cool deck builders in this community. There are people who come up with really crazy ideas, and it's really nice. Yes, your idea. Go. I'm looking for the next question while I'm listening to you.
Turn 1. Melgus produces red.
Got it.
Tap your other ruler. Use the red and the mana you produce from the stone you got to the other ruler. Set your Nighttime Raiders. Next turn, Welser tap, deal 200 damage, immediately have any 5-drop in your hand.
We playing Mylist Stealth?
Mylist Stealth, baby.
Mylist Mujdart Stealth combo. Let's go.
I'm thinking Mylist Stealth.
See, the thing is, we can go faster. We can go faster than this.
Continue.
We can do it. Well, the problem is chance standbys have to wait a whole turn. But magic of trust and love. Magic of trust and love.
Jeremy, what can Mylist hit? Can Mylist only hit your opponent's face and creatures on the field?
He can hit both.
Can he hit your own face?
Yes.
Let's go to the
Pale Savior.
Ah! We've broken it. We have to build it, Mike.
This is a resonator.
We have to build it.
So.
4 Magic of Trust and Love, 4 Pale Savior, 4 the Dark Spell, reanimate targets. Go!
Wait, hang on. Charles is about to tell me that I'm wrong. Give me a sec.
We'll break Seth the Arbiter. He's next. Listen here.
No, don't tell me that it's restrictive. I'm looking this thing up right now, Charlie. I don't believe you.
Pale Savior would work. Pale Savior.
Dealt damage to your opponent this turn.
Pale Savior works though, right?
I'm so mad.
Does Pale Savior work? Somebody check Pale Savior.
Let's see. Hang on.
Because if Pale Savior works, that's fine too. That's good to me too.
A J resonator your opponent controls dealt damage to you this turn.
Dang it!
This
doesn't
is
work
the
either
worst
way.
day of my entire life.
This is worse.
This is so sad. Alexa, play this.
So it comes to office hours where your dreams can come to die.
Yay! Any old good reanimation cards to combo with cheap discard abilities like Garion. Well, Garion's discard ability sets him to the remove from game zone, so that's not helpful. Old reanimations. I mean, Dance of Spirits is still pretty good, but costs 4. When we have
Dance of Shadows.
When we had dance. What did I say? Not
Dance of Spirits. The silence.
Oh, the silence.
Wow.
Bye, Mike. 7 Deadly Sins.
Silence.
7 Deadly Sins at that point is just better than that. Command of Life and Death, still a great card. That's true, but only hits 3 drops. 3 drops or less.
There's memory disappearance. Just a one drop brings something back
How about Dark Alice,
from the
Maiden of
Great
Slaughter?
Fire.
She hasn't had fun in a while, eh? Again, I definitely think that you could build a black, solid, new age darkness deck played with Dark Alice, like as your ruler. I do not think
Okay.
there's anything stopping you from doing that and having a great time in Wanderer. And that's the beauty. I think that's the beauty again of what Wanderer is to me, is the fact that the main deck cards that I have Paul sorting right now so that we're organized for the channel, honestly still about 70% of them are just going to stay in those boxes forever as Mike continues to try to get on and off. But my binder full of rulers is suddenly going to get a lot more use out of it than it has in the past 5 years. By the way, this channel is now 6 years old.
Still old yet?
Yeah. Yeah, YouTube just recently told me, like, hey, it's your birthday on your channel. It's like 6 years of doing foul content. Jeez Louise.
I was still in college when you started this channel.
Yeah.
Dear God.
Yeah, we were meeting at the Wesley Foundation to record on a terrible camera. It was a good time. Sylvia plus Sacred Nyarlathotep doll into Sacred Elf is cute. That will not work. I do not think, Roderick, because it doesn't have the typing Fire Magic Stone, so it doesn't have the ability to tap to produce will, just like Burning Pot and those other cards didn't have the ability to produce will. They just trigger resonance, if I'm correct. Charlie's in the chat, so he'll correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that works.
Yeah, he'll correct you real quick.
Yeah, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, for sure, but I don't think that currently works.
I'm pretty sure that's entirely right. It's just treated as a stone as it comes in to trigger resonance.
For the sake of resonance, yeah. Rhea, then turn 1 Neo Barrier, then revive Dark Alice. It specifically works with Sylvia. I stand corrected. Thank you very much, Charlie. You just can't have it revealed from outside the game without, So then we're talking about having those 2 cards in your hand opener, and it specifically works.
You mean OG Sylvia? Got it.
Yeah, I was thinking about that, the OG Sylvia, but the wording.
Oh, okay.
The wording
that's a bit different.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I had a kid, so that'll make me feel old. I have 2 kids. Coda just turned 4 yesterday. I have a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old.
Again.
Yeah, I have a second. I have a 4-year-old again. Yeah, there's a lot of fun stuff that we're planning for Wanderer. I do want to talk about the last little bit of our time, which has been an interesting. This topic has been really in depth, which has been fun. I've really enjoyed how active the chat's been. I really like when the chat is active during these nights. It makes it a lot more fun to be able to engage with you guys. It's the whole point of why we do this live, as opposed to when we did the Teacher's Lounge. Mike is trying to reconnect. Is Singapore has been playing cluster format to try to help bridge the gap between current people just getting in and people, like, prepare them for some of the things that exist in Wanderer without flooding them with every single card. And what they are currently playing is any card printed in 2022 dual cluster, so Game of Gods Reloaded, and then it will be Revolution, plus all of the dual stones, plus all of the Wanderer League promos, plus all of the Ruler League promos starting from 2021. That's the format that they're allowed to play in. And I've watched some Geo the Bacon, who won the Converging Wills event, and who also was our player who did the cool decapitation combo at the GP for Carta Magica, has posted those on his YouTube channel. I definitely recommend checking those out. And I gotta say, it looks pretty dang fun as a cool thought experiment and a way to say, hey, I don't have all of Wanderer. I'm waiting on that reprint set, but I do have Wanderer League promos, and I have access to Dual Stones. Let's goof around. Yeah, it's pretty neat. Paul, what would you think about, maybe trying to try our own hand at just for fun doing that kind of video?
Well, I know for sure that there are folks at my locals that would appreciate a format like that because we're always getting new people in to either try the game out. I know we just got 3 new players that had
Awesome.
never played before, and they got in through the new order rulers. And so, like, if we just said, like, yep, any promo you pick up, you can use in your deck, no big deal, house rule. Try adding dual stones as you pick them up and as you get started, and then they just have their first core deck and they're just good to go. But I'd be interested. I mean, it's certainly like a niche meta game. Like I'd be
Yeah.
very interested.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it
Um,
might be something to maybe talk to Dan CCG Prime about to see if he wants to run a couple weekends of it so we can get a couple recordings for your community and see if people maybe like that better, at least for now until in my mind, I think the goal of it is, hey, the Wanderer cards are coming. Let's start you playing it with the idea of dual stones and some of what Wanderer kind of looks like, but in terms of stuff that you actually have to purchase, let's stick to the present. And I think it's a cool approach. So then maybe we'll give it a try. Okay, it's got some questions here. Jeremy's Foul Minions. Alice did ask me today that she wanted to try Force of Will again. So, like, we getting close. Reading comprehension, and with it being Wanderer, I can just build her a current deck. So, like, yeah. When do we get to watch the top 20 Darkness cards? Wednesday. Because I don't have a feature match for this week. Recording one. Like to see something like my Pioneers decks. Question: if you use a chant like 4C and then you Judgment for Flute Time Priestess, do you get the chant back with her effect? I think that's exactly what Flute does. Anything that you've cast comes back to your hand that turn, I think. Go look up the text for me.
where is this? If you use a chant like 4C and then you Judgment, well, the way that would, and Charlie would tell me if I'm wrong because he's here. The way that would work is you would resolve for C,
Right.
and then you'd be able to do Judgment because it's your main timing again.
Correct.
So you could get that back.
And then
if she
that's
recurs
and
you
that
a-
and I think that's exactly what Flute does. Is anything you've cast that turn comes back into your hand.
Let's find out.
When is the top 20 dual color cards? After top 20. Ooh, getting that weird shot from Mike to finish things out. Flip your camp.
Let me turn it around.
Oh no. What a way to end it. No, Dan. So Dan, thank you for being here. It's an alternate format called "quote unquote" cluster format, where it's dual cluster, so Game of Gods Reloaded and Game of Gods, plus any of the dual stones, plus any Wanderer League promos and any Ruler League promos starting in 2021. So that's the format. And it's a fan format being done by Singapore to kind of get their newer players understanding a little bit about what exists in Wanderer because of the promos, and trying out what it looks like to play with dual stones, but only having to worry about buying the newer cards. So might be something to try out over at CCG Prime. If we weren't already past 10 o'clock, I would give away some promo Dispelling Stones, so we will give those away next week. Sorry, Dan. Top 20 tool cards would be after top 20 darkness cards. Yeah, again, that closes us out for us for tonight. This has been a wonderful conversation. I do thank you all for so many awesome questions, and being so engaged in the chat. The chat has been lighting up, which is awesome. If you haven't already, please go sign up for that April 16th Wanderer Discord GP if you're in the United States. The link is in the description to be able to get signed up for that. It's only $35, and you get the five duets plus you get the 5 duets plus Dark Alice plus Moonshade. And then I believe the top cut promo for that one is back to number 13, which would be awesome. It's April 16th and 17th on Discord via webcam. Check that out and get signed up for that. And top 4 does have cash prizing, which was awesome. So $500 cash to top 4. So well worth checking out. If you can't participate, you can always tune into the stream, but it's just as a reminder, the chat during those streams is locked to being members only. So if you feel like wanting to support the channel financially, click in that join button. It's just $2 a month. It's essentially a Twitch subscription, just YouTube's version of it. And you can access the chat and all the cool emotes. But that has been us. And we had Mike for a bit, and then we lost him, and we had him, and we lost him, and we had him, and we lost him. But this is myself, DMO73, and I have been joined, as always, by Paul Reisman.
Later, guys.
Saying class dismissed. Have a good night, everybody.